Before I delve too deep into this video, I should clarify that this is my opinion. I'm just explaining my choice. I'm not trying to sway anyone else's class choices. This is supposed to be informative, and not say that everyone needs to play the class that I'm playing because it's overpowered or it's the best for everyone in their own playstyles. I will also note that this guide does not take into account DPS numbers, so I'm not rating this on how overpowered these classes are, but rather how to choose an enjoyable class for you. So what was my decision-making process for me picking the class that I'm taking into the expansion? Well, now that the pre-patch is here, I can test every class and take an educated guess on how they will work mechanically at max level. I've tested a fair few classes, but not all of them, and the classes I have not tested, I have watched other YouTubers play and heard their opinions on the class. Anyway, what should be your priorities when choosing a class for Legion? Priority 1, gameplay. As general advice for anyone who is stuck on what class to take into Legion, I always recommend the class that you have the most fun on. This varies from person to person. For me, the Warlock ticked all my boxes. I wanted a caster, and more importantly, I enjoyed the rotation and mechanics of the Warlock. My two preferred specs are Destruction by a long shot, followed by Affliction. Destruction has always been my favorite spec in the game, from start to finish, and recently I've enjoyed where Affliction is going as well. Most classes and specs now have the option of going full single target, full AoE, a hybrid of both, PvE orientated and PvP orientated. For me, on my Warlock, I have enjoyed all possible paths I can take with the spec and playstyles, so I'm sticking with it. I have found it very enjoyable, and I've asked myself this question: if my class did not change for a long time in terms of mechanics or rotation, would I still enjoy it? And for me, the answer is a solid yes. I enjoy hurling Chaos Bolts and making my spec operate around it. I love having the option of my Incinerate hitting all targets and blanket the floor with fire. I think it's a really cool sight to see. I have fun using my Havoc carefully in PvP situations and hit two people with Chaos Bolts and make them panic from the burst they are receiving. I really enjoy the survivability that Affliction has to offer and the dot management. And I really enjoy what they have done with Unstable Affliction and being tactical on how and when you should stack the debuff. So if you have the option, I recommend playing as many classes as possible, try the rotations, and see how you can spice it up with your talent choices. A class for you should be one where you can enjoy as many of the talent choices as possible, being flexible for any given situation where you might have to change talents. Also take into consideration off specs. Do you enjoy the other specs your class has to offer? For example, with a druid, if you only enjoy balance but none of the other specs, and probably won't play them for the rest of the expansion, then I would probably recommend a different caster for you, so you have more DPS caster options like a warlock or a mage. However, if you do not like any other caster options and you enjoy the resource management and talent choices of balanced druids, then by all means stick with your balanced druid. Take into consideration if you want to heal, DPS, tank, or all of them for this expansion, and choose a class that not only ticks all these boxes but is enjoyable too. For example, I personally don't like tanking as a warrior anymore. I just don't like the new mechanics. It doesn't match my playstyle. Now, I'm not going to say never play Protection Warriors because it did not suit me. I'm sure other players love the spec and swear by it. As for me, if I want to tank, I'll play a Blood Death Knight, which is quite funny since I did not like tanking as a Blood DK before the pre-patch. It all boils down to personal preference, and we each have our own wants, needs, must-haves, and enjoyable factors for our own class choices that other people might not have. Simply put, find a class you find enjoyable in as many aspects as possible. Whether that be from enjoying a diverse choice in talents and liking them all, enjoying all the specs the class has to offer, or just playing one spec one way but having the time of your life. Priority 2, PvE, PvP, or both. The next step is what you really want out of your class. Ask any WoW player and they will tell you that there is a huge difference on how a class is played from PvP to PvE. For example, in PvE, Chaos Bolt is one of my main damage dealers. It does a huge amount of burst if spec'd correctly, and puts a damage increased taken debuff on the target. It can also restore mana and is a real go-to spell when you can use it. In PvP, if you cast Chaos Bolt in the middle of a fight, you're probably going to get interrupted and smash into the ground. So to make up for that, you need to spec into Shadowburn, and thus you can do Chaos Bolt damage on the move. Being able to do high damage on the move is fairly useless in most PvE encounters, so instead of having a larger arsenal of spells, you just enhance the ones that you use most of the time. From this example, we can see how a class's playstyle changes depending on the scenario. If you are only going to do PvE, that's fine. Just make sure you have a class that ticks all your boxes for PvE in terms of talent choices, specs like DPS and tanking, and rotation. If you're only going to do PvP, make sure that you enjoy your class in PvP situations. I'd give it a test in a few battlegrounds or arenas before devoting to the class. You might like your damage output in PvP, but your lack of mobility might frustrate you and make you want to re-roll, or vice versa. Also make sure you have the crowd control that you want from that class, like stuns, slows, mobilities, fears, snares, etc. Some classes are more like glass cannons compared to others. And if you are going to do both PvP and PvE, make sure you enjoy your class from both perspectives. I've played a fair few classes that I really enjoyed in PvE, but when I entered a battleground I hated the playstyle, or the lack of damage, mobility, or crowd control. Those are the real priorities in my opinion. Now, there are some other ways people are gauging on what class to play in Legion that I wouldn't recommend. Again, this is opinion, and if you want these as your priorities, then you have every right to. Go nuts. I just wouldn't recommend it. Bad priority 1, artifact weapon. Don't get me wrong, gauging on what class to play based on your artifact weapon's abilities is not a bad decision in any way, especially if you're going to be using that ability regularly or in your rotation. However, I have noticed a lot of people are choosing what class to play based purely on their artifact weapon abilities. What I mean by this is not taking into account all of your class abilities and rotation. I mean, sure, you could love the artifact weapon and orgasm every time you use it, but if you hate your rotation and playstyle, then that fun of proccing that one ability will die down pretty quickly. Just saying. My recommendation is to look at your class abilities, rotations, and playstyle first, then check out your artifact abilities. Oh yeah, and some people are playing a class based on what their artifact weapon looks like, which is a worse priority, especially since you can transmog over it, but whatever. This does not make you a paladin. This makes you a paladin. Bad priority 2, overpoweredness, which is not a word by the way. Choosing a class purely based on the numbers it can push is a very bad idea, especially if you don't enjoy the class. At some point, if your class's numbers are too crazy, Blizzard will notice it, and it will get fixed or nerfed. Then you are left with a class you don't enjoy that is doing as much damage or as well in PvP as every other class, except now you hate your class and you want to reroll, or pray to Blizzard God that your numbers will go up again. I know this is quite funny to hear coming from a guy who's playing an Affliction Warlock from time to time, but I actually enjoy the playstyle. But with that said, I prefer Destruction more. I just like to alternate from time to time. Anyway, I hope this has helped. Let me know what class you are playing in the comments and why. Like if this was informative, and subscribe if you want to see me talk about more WoW stuff. I don't know exactly what yet, but I'll come up with something. You'll see. Have a good one.